Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to ActiveNav's 5-minute video series. My name is Mason Belcher. I'm an account executive with ActiveNav. Today, we're going to be talking about breach responses and how tools such as ActiveNav's solution can help you with these breaches in order to really eliminate the headaches associated with them and better make you prepared for when they do happen. Now, really to dive in today, it all comes down to the concept of it's not if, it's when your organization gets breached. We've seen it irregardless of industry or whether you're a government entity, from cities like Atlanta and Baltimore to the big financial services like Equifax, face these issues and have to face the cost both in financial and human capital aspects associated with them afterwards. Now, one thing you can do is try to be proactive, but it really comes down to what are these steps involved to really be proactive for a data breach? Let's find out. One of the first stats I like to show here is really the cost associated by a record containing sensitive and confidential information with these breaches. Right here, you'll see it's about $150. Now, you scale that out with organizations that have terabytes of content, that's really millions of files. And really the cost associated with these breaches can go very quickly. So that's why the less sensitive information we have out there, the less risks there are, the cheaper it's going to be in the long run for having to deal with these breaches. This is another good statistic I like to show here, showing that the actual cost of a data breach on average exceeds about $150 million around this year. Now, obviously, this is probably on the bigger scale of organizations and the cost they're facing. Obviously, like I've already mentioned, the post-breach cost associated, as well as the fines we'll see with the GDPRs and CCPAs of the world, who are really trying to hammer down these data breaches and data privacy initiatives that really are wanting you to be more proactive and not just try to hope there's one silver bullet out there that's going to solve and stop these breaches. We all know at this point there's no amount of money in the world that's really going to stop it all. And really just comes down to being proactive and being prepared for when these events do happen. Another big concept I want to talk about today is that these breaches are only getting bigger. Obviously, the more content and data that we're saving day over day, the more risks that are going to be out there. By minimizing our data set, staying prepared, and staying proactive to these concepts, these breaches can be minimized. We can better sleep at night knowing that what we have out there isn't sensitive, doesn't have these risks associated. Now, like I've mentioned, being proactive is the biggest thing with these breaches. Now, how do we be proactive? First, it really comes down to the concepts of data minimization. And one of the best ways we can start with that activity is really looking at what we like to call redundant, obsolete, and trivial content, essentially rot data. And now what this is really data that is no longer providing value to the business or the organization as a whole. It is essentially just taking up space, potentially posing more risks to the organization that they need to have. Now, and if we can really eliminate this rot content and really get down to the meat and bones of what we're storing, that is where from there we can start actually, one, sleeping better at night, knowing that these risks are not out there anymore, but really from there also start utilizing this unstructured data that may beforehand just been seen as a big junk pile. Now, by deleting these unnecessary files, we're really helping to also just understand what we're storing as a whole, and from there start getting into what I like to call the cooler exercises within data discovery in the file analysis market, such as ActiveNav is in. For example, classification. When you're trying to do classification projects, in order to enrich your metadata with tagging and exercises of the such, it can be pretty difficult when you're just trying to deal with essentially a big digital landfill. Now we get that down to, again, the meat and bones, and makes these practices much easier, which overall can help you just be proactive, again, to these data breaches. Now, case studies. We've seen organizations, again, such as the Equifaxes, who ActiveNav actually was able to help with their post-breach exercises to overcome their challenges. And really, it's good to study these case studies in order to better understand and make sure these same issues don't come up in the future going forward. Now, what are some of the first few things that we can take note of from these organizations? Well, one of the first things they realized was that the creation of a data map to understand their data landscape would have been very beneficial in the start. This is something that before you start taking action on your data with things like deletion and tagging, really helps you visualize your data corpus and really what the appropriate next steps are to do. Along with that visualization, you're going to, again, understand really from there the sensitive data that's out there that hackers might be able to locate. Now, this can be the typical things such as social security numbers, credit card numbers, just any general PII, as well as other things like, God forbid, password files. Now, this is the bane of an organization's existence, especially when they're in unstructured repositories. In terms of, unstructured data has not always been seen as the crown jewels of an organization and what they're storing, But when they're able to get into things like password files that are stored in here, which, believe me, is things that still people save today, as much as I'd like to say they aren't, there's just too many passwords out there these days for us to all remember in our brains. We have to go out there, write it down somewhere, and sadly, sometimes people are still saving it, on their network drives or whatever within the organization, which is posing a huge risk. And with that, we can identify these files, get rid of them. We can, again, sleep better at night knowing these risks are going to be mitigated. And then lastly, again, it's all just about actioning this data that could be outdated. If a file, again, is 5+ years old, no one's touched it in the last 3 years, probably doesn't need to be stored anymore, especially if it poses risks. Let's get it out of there, sleep better at night, knowing it's just not an issue at all. And really going back to the if not if, but when situation with data breaches, I like to show this quote as well, built out by the CIO of Barclays and the CTO of HBR, really talking about how there's two companies, those that have been breached and those that don't know they have. Again, it's going to happen. Breaches are out there. There's just no silver bullet that's going to stop them from happening overall, no amount of money in the world that's really going to help you sleep better at night, just knowing that there's no chance it'll happen. So let's be proactive. Let's figure out the ways that we can truly manage our content in order to be more proactive against these breaches. And now I've already talked about being proactive and how there are a few solutions out there regarding data privacy that can help. Well, luckily, ActiveNav is one of them. Just to give you a little bit of background about us, we're over a decade old at this point. This has helped us build out some of the most extensive rule sets in the whole file analysis market. And you can see here we've worked with some big organizations, especially one like I've already mentioned, Equifax with their post-breach exercises to really help them understand the content they have, as well as other organizations such as Voya Financial and the USMC, along with many others in various industries. Doesn't matter what kind of organization you are at this point or what industry you're in. Every company is a data company. You have these rules out there. Let's make sure you're mitigating those risks, getting value out of them, and ActiveNav is here to help do that. If you'd like to learn more about us, feel free to reach out to our website at activenav.com or send me an email at mason.belcher@activenav.com. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a happy holidays.